don't know.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday, November 17, 2008 informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. We'll now call the meeting to order. And our first order of business is going to be the City Council staff report, and we will have updates from Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. A couple of things to remind you of. There will be a breakfast club this Wednesday, and they'll be talking about the legislative issues that are important to the school district and to the county, and then, of course, to the city. So before you is the final version, if you will, for your 2009 legislative goals and objectives for the session in Pier. And so if there's any further input on that, please let me know today. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and have leadership sign off on that, and we'll get that ready to run through the council. In addition, just to give you an update, we did have a transportation projects meeting here today, and that was really very informative as both, I think, local community and the state look to trying to fund and very important projects across the state and, of course, to the City of Sioux Falls. So that was great. Also, to remind you, there's a UDC meeting this Thursday at 3 p.m. In addition, during that day at 3 p.m., there also is a CIP meeting for those of you who like to attend that over at the old City Council chambers in Town Hall. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Deborah. Seeing nobody from the mayor, is anybody speaking for Mayor Munson's office today? I guess not. Audit Committee, I know there's no report from that. Number 5 is the Fiscal Committee. Gerald?
No report.
Thank you. Number 6, Land Use Committee. Kenny?
That's Greg,
Greg,
actually.
sorry.
No report, but also the next meeting was canceled due to no new requests.
This may be the shortest meeting we've ever had here. Land Use Committee. Now I get Kenny. Wait a minute. No, Public Services, excuse me.
We are working on several issues, but I have no report on those at this time.
Very good. Well, it takes us to the other part of the, Councilor Knutson, did you have something to?
Just for open discussion.
Well, that's next up. Item number 8, City Council open discussion.
Okay, I was afraid
Councilor Knutson.
I was afraid I was rushing you. I just wanted to remind all of you, and I would like it posted on our master calendar too, please, is that I'm talking about the project, the site committee on the for the homeless, the Housing First program for the chronically homeless. We are still making really, I think, good progress, having really good discussions, and I so much appreciate having Councilor Brown at our last couple of meetings when he is so knowledgeable about this area and serving on the Homeless Advisory Board besides. So it's really, I really appreciate his presence at those last two meetings. But anyway, our next meeting is Wednesday, December 3rd at 10 a.m., again, over in the Health and Human Services building up in one of the conference rooms. And again, I would just really like to welcome, any and all of you who can attend. And again, we just are, our task is really quite narrow. We are just our group, which is, of course, some county commissioners and city councilors, and then wonderful staff for both. We are just working hard on trying to find a really good building or piece of land that would work to build a home for the chronically homeless. And again, it's what our plan is and has been for a long, long time, is to be able to build a facility for the chronically homeless that would house a minimum of 35 individuals and would be very, very modest housing. I mean, only like 380 square feet, so we're talking really small here for these 35 individuals. Of course, with common space for caseworkers and so forth, because I, again, want to stress that, we're not talking shelter here. We're talking about something way more substantial as far as supportive housing plan. And Councilor Brown, is there anything you'd like to add to what I just said?
No, I think you've covered it well. You're getting close, I think, to recommendations.
Okay. And then I also wanted to remind all of you and also the listening public that the Sioux Empire Homeless Coalition, which works very hard on advocacy and again, November is the month that they even do more than the rest of the year, I think, and they work hard throughout the year. But I'd just like to remind everyone that they have a speakers bureau. And so if, in fact, there's an organization out there that is interested in having a speaker on the important topic of homelessness in our community, which unfortunately exists more than I wish, is that people should seriously consider calling Melanie Bliss, the city coordinator for the homeless, or they can contact Stacy Teason, or they can contact me, or they contact Vernon Brown, but we would help put you in touch with the Speakers Bureau.
Very good. Questions of Dee? I'd also like to add something to that in a related item, is that I've been aware recently of the food pantries across the state of having a run on products, and so if you have an opportunity to donate or contribute to any of these food pantries, there's a number of drives going on. Why, please do so, because there's folks that depend on us. The other couple of items here is, Greg, you had a code issues thing here, and we're talking about bringing it up to a committee, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about what it is to the rest of the council, and then we'll make an assignment.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, last week I've been in Orlando. Last Monday, you guys were gracious enough to allow me to speak via speakerphone from Orlando. Thank you. And during that time, the administration was going to look into the subject of what's going on with code enforcement, what challenges they have, what recommendations they have. So I just wanted to share a couple of their comments with you. They've got really some proactive approaches that they're taking, that they're doing right now, like Project Nice and Project Keep. I think we've all seen the effects that they've had on areas like Pettigrew Heights and how they can change a community or change a neighborhood like that. They really felt, though, there were some challenges with this idea of maybe cross-training some of the employees over so that they could actually enforce the code. Say a water department water meter guy could actually give out a warning ticket or actually a ticket. Some of their concerns with that idea that I brought up was that we would probably increase the number of complaints filed, and in that process we would also increase the number of the whole process that it would take. So more staff would possibly be needed to handle all the new complaints, make sure that they were followed through and everything happened on time and was done accordingly to the law. So that was their first issue. And another issue was that the code enforcement officers out there are paid more than just your regular city employees that are out maybe doing something else. And so that if they were involved with code enforcement, that maybe we'd have to pay them more, which is probably true because there'd be more training and more responsibility that would be required of them. So we need to be sensitive to that issue. The other one was that any of this other cross-training activity would maybe take away from their normal day-to-day operation, their normal day-to-day jobs, and potentially make them less productive in their current role. And then ultimately the final problem possibly would be that the public would be less impressed with public service if they were not doing some of their things as efficiently as possible. So those are some of the issues they brought up. They are going to be working on a communications piece that will eventually get out to the public about what the public has for responsibilities in living in a community like Sioux Falls, what rules there are and what things they need to follow. They're going to try to get that out to the public. I guess so. The bottom line is if the city council wants it done differently, we need to ask for it. The city's doing everything they've been told to do, and with all the, everything at their hands that they can do, they're doing. And I think they're probably doing as well as they can do. I think the whole problem comes from whether or not we want to have citizens as the people in charge of calling the code enforcement and filing a complaint. I think that is the crux of the whole problem and creates a bigger problem down the line. I think if we keep it going as we're doing, I don't see a possibility for future success beyond what we're already getting. Now, I myself have been involved with 2 cases that have gone way beyond what I ever imagined they would and should. And I'm new at this, I know, just 9 months or 8 months, whatever it is, Kenny. Kenny knows more than I do. But I just felt like there's got to be a better way to do it. And if it takes cross-training of employees and paying them some more money, and we have to allocate that, and we have to be the ones who say, look, it's got to be done different, I'm going to vote for it. I'd vote for it today if it meant we had to. I've got to change something. Something different has to happen. I don't think it can just keep going on the way it is myself. Now, I certainly am not fully educated on this whole process. I haven't even had a chance to go down and visit with code enforcement. This is just from an outsider perspective. A councilman who's been called on a couple of occasions by several very disappointed citizens in the city. And I want to make a difference. I came here to do a job, to bring some new ideas, to shake it up if we got to do it. But I guess probably the challenge is whether or not we as the council want to spend more money on this issue. I guess that's probably where it's going to come down to. And if there's a vote today, I'm all in favor of doing whatever we need to do to make this process a smoother process so that we stop pitting neighbors against neighbors. And if the city's going to put a code on the books, we should be the ones putting the power behind it and the force behind it. If that means spending a little more money, cross-training employees, I'd sure like to recommend that.
Thanks. Questions of Greg. Councilor Benning first.
Greg, I appreciate your input, and I certainly think that's something we need to look forward or into further and move forward with, not only the code enforcement issues, but the inspection issues. The other thing that I have a concern about that was brought about primarily from an election, but it's been a conversation of other people in the past, is the fact that there seems to be too long of a lag time between the time that we issue a warning or a response to a code enforcement issue till the time that they have to correct that issue. And I think that the city council needs to look at that length of time and discuss amongst ourselves, even in some sort of committee format, on ways to streamline that process so that people who've had code enforcement issues or frankly have figured out how the system works and shorten that period of time so people see a response quicker and sooner that shows that our customer service responsibilities, if you will, are to maintain those laws and to make sure that the regulations are followed up with. So I would like to include that in that process, and I would suggest that leadership find a committee to assign this to and consider reviewing those concerns.
Councilor Brown and then Councilor Knudsen.
I agree. I thank you for bringing it up again. We've talked about it before, but have never moved on it. And I would like to see us take a look at it. If you always do things the same way, you're always going to get the same results, and it's not acceptable. I even look at, and I've talked about this before, the brochure that we send out for code enforcement issues that has all the list of phone numbers. If the car's on the street, you call a certain number. If it's in a backyard, you have to call a different number. That's ridiculous. It's terrible customer service. And I would ask that maybe you assign it to a committee, public services or other, and we take a long, good, hard look at it and see if there's got to be a better way of doing it.
Councilor Knudsen.
And I'd just like to add a couple just thoughts. Again, I do think it's an important topic for us to just continue to help improve in every way we can. Is that I was just thinking, Councilor Jameson, that'd be a good show for Channel 16 with you and the code enforcement officer, Brad Hartman. That would be a good topic. And then as far as the pitting neighbors against each other, of course, that's always very unfortunate. And I was, I guess I thought that a person could still very much, and I still think that actually, that a person can call in on a code violation without identifying yourself. So I was thinking that that would help on the pitting neighbors against each other kind of thing. Again, I always think it's best when neighbors have problems with each other, if they would try to work it out with each other by, preferably a visit in person, a phone call or email or something before they go, before it has to go to a city level. But I was thinking the anonymous process is available. And then I wonder too is, that flyer that does list all of the most frequent code violations and so forth is maybe we might, as a city council, want to just try to make that even more available, maybe even, in a utility insert again sometime soon, something like that. And then I think even just stress the code enforcement number. We could, we could do that more ourselves during our meetings and so forth. So I think there are a lot of other ways we can just kind of keep the code enforcement issue out there and keep working on it.
Mr. Councilor Jameson.
Yeah, I think Jody Schwan is going to work on those new communication pieces to help keep that message out there. Your comment about the neighbors talking to neighbors and trying to work out the problems. See, I think that's exactly how it works today, is that people try to do that, and then the one neighbor doesn't participate, and he doesn't remove the problem or doesn't fix the problem. And then that other neighbor then, his only resort is to call code enforcement. And now that other neighbor knows that the neighbor that he just talked to about it is the one who's complaining. Mm-hmm. Now there's this new bridge, a new fence that's put up between them, and now they're fighting over this issue. And one guy drives home, he drives up right next to the neighbor, to the other, gives him a dirty look, mm-hmm. maybe gives him a few gestures or something. The trouble is, I'd sure like to encourage that neighbor-to-neighbor activity, and that's the right way to do it. That's the way it should work. But maybe if all the neighbors knew that there's, the city is actually out there enforcing this, and the city is the one carrying the big stick, and they're going to be coming around door to door, that guy's not going to take it so personal when one neighbor complains. And I'd just like to see us, frankly, wield a bigger stick if we're going to do it.
Anybody else? Well, I'm personally glad to see this subject come up because I've been very interested in the code enforcement. Part of my district is in an older part of town, and there's quite a bit of need for code enforcement that goes on. So I've actually delved into this quite a bit. And number one is the complaint basis that we do things on, unless something is just horrendously obvious when we go by. That's one part of it, and then of course our legal staff, doing their part towards getting it into court. But then the third part we have very little control over is a judge that would, hold the fine or levy the fine and be serious about it. And I've also, some of these are pretty simple problems and they have pretty simple solutions, but in my investigation of, the fines levied, the uncollected fines that Rich Oxel talked to us about a while back, and reasons for that, the absentee landlord situation, the deal where we're dealing with private properties on foreclosures of houses that have been abandoned, takes 2 years. State laws intermix with some of these things here, and what might seem like a very simple problem becomes astonishingly complex to solve. And then, at the end of the day, let's say when somebody gets a $200 fine and they don't pay it, do we spend the resources to go after them? Is it worth our time to do that? And it's a very complex situation. And but I will tell you one thing. If any of you counselors go down to Pete Nicolai's office, go down to code enforcement sometime, and look at some of the pictures that they have to deal with, some of the places that they go into, it is shocking. I mean, I kid you not. I wouldn't even go in there unless I was in some sort of a safety suit, some of the places and the things that they have to deal with. And, I'm just amazed because, I've been by some of these places and you can't really tell from the outside, but on the inside, it's really sad that some people choose to live like that, or they've gone past the capability where they can make rational decisions as to whether they want to live in a situation. So, yeah, it's something that we need to look at. It's something that I would really like to see brought to light too. But on the same hand, I don't want to become a city that is very heavy-handed. I don't want to seem brutal or overreaching or overbearing when we do these things too. And I'm not sure there's a good answer because you're looking for some middle ground and something that's really touchy. And like you said, neighbors, any time you're talking about somebody's private property, it's very personal to them. regardless of what the situation is. So, I think what we probably want to do is we'll put it into a committee here in a little bit, and we'll have a good look at it, and we'll examine the subject and see if we can come up with some solutions. Councilor Knudsen.
Just a couple other practical thoughts that I have on this topic would be, it just might be good to remind the listening public that, again, if a person has, concerns about code enforcement and they think that something should have been done, or, they're discouraged with the slowness of the process, to just remind people they can go to the website, the city website, and then they can click on the left under city attorney's office and see all the, the citations that have been given and the status of those citations. And again, that's just been in place for a little bit over a year, I believe, maybe a little bit longer than that. I don't quite remember the exact time, but I think that might not be commonly known, even though, we've tried as a city to get that word out. But for those people that, again, are frustrated at the end that things aren't getting done or they're not getting done fast enough, I think that would be helpful. And another thought is sometime even before we start getting lots of snow and so forth, is maybe we might want to have the code enforcement officer, have Brad Hartman come and visit with us again, just as a little bit of review about his job and what he encounters every day, and not just Brad, but I'm just thinking of our main full-time code enforcement person. That would be a thought, too.
Anybody, anything else on this subject? Well, very good. I think, Pat and I, as chair and vice chair, talked this over, and we know a public services committee gets assigned to a lot of things. I know you get some outside help every now and then, but we felt that committee would be the most appropriate one for us to assign that to. We couldn't think of where else it would go. So, as chairperson, I'm going to assign this issue to the Public Services Committee.
And we think we're the best committee anyway. So, I just had to say that.
We'll give you an opportunity to prove that, Councilor Knudsen. So very good. One other thing here, Councilor Costello.
Just some of us might remember a few meetings ago we had an issue where we were dealing with all the people who were concerned about getting their fines and stuff, and the thought occurred to me that I wonder if we published the notice in the Argus Leader that people should shovel their sidewalks when it snows. Maybe the committee could reinforce that.
My notice has always been when white things fall out of the sky and land on the sidewalk. That's my notice that I have to shovel it. So, but one other thing here, as long as we've got Councilor Jameson, I know that Kenny and Greg and then Deborah Owens went to Florida this week, and would you care to update us on what sort of activities and any monkey business that went on down there as well?
Very good. Thank you, Bob. Mr. Chairman. You're right, Kenny, Deb, and myself were all in Orlando, Florida last week, and there's National League of Cities conference, essentially, and all kinds of great leadership seminars and training sessions we attended. Some of the ones I attended were community branding. If anybody were to think what our logo was for Sioux Falls and what our slogan might be, does anybody know? This is a test. Dee, do you know?
Well, I guess I think the chamber thing, a great thing going, or...
Yeah, but what is Sioux Falls? What's our logo? What's our slogan? I know.
I'm not sure.
It's the same issue I had, and that's why I attended the meeting for that. I think we can do a better job of branding Sioux Falls with a single message that carries across all the departments. But anyway, that was one of them. Working with the media, speaking so people will listen was one of the sessions I went to. Downtown revitalization. The comment out of there was that if you've got water, any kind of water in your downtown, you should treat that as liquid gold, because that's the same issue across the country. If you've got water coming through your downtown, you should surround it and use that as a tool to build your downtown. Just on another personal note, a couple things. I did learn a lot. Friday night, I stood on my balcony deck, 20th floor of the hotel I was at, and watched the space shuttle take off. And that is quite an amazing sight. Gave me goosebumps, really. It's pretty cool. If you've never seen it, you should try to see one up close and personal. But I saw it from Orlando. I don't know how far away it was, but it's pretty amazing. It almost looked fake. You know, the other thing, I was on my way back on Saturday and on the flight. Just a personal note here, I was sitting in my chair listening to Bruce Springsteen on my headphones, like I always do when I fly, and it took a while, but I noticed in the row across from me, there was a 7-year-old boy who had just gone to Disney World with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and this little child had just everything you could think of wrong with him, and all these health issues, and, you know, here's a kid who's probably, you know, on his last flight ever someplace. And I was sitting there listening to Bruce Springsteen, thinking about all the great stuff I'd learned and all the problems I'm going to solve and just how great things are. It kind of just set me back a little bit, thinking about this kid. Anyway, Sioux Falls has a lot of great things going. And I'm just glad to be a part of it. But I think we've got great opportunities here, and we don't really have any problems. We just get opportunities that we can improve on. Just a personal note.
Thanks, Greg. Kenny, any observations you'd care to share with us?
Well, I thought it was an amazing conference to go to. Hundreds of mayors and councilmen, representatives from cities all across America. In some of the seminars that I attended, the one common thing that I noticed between Sioux Falls and some of these other communities, how they stress with their budgets and development and growth and, you know, different areas, and how each one does or handles those issues a little bit different. But the one thing common theme that I came across here is that, you know, we all struggle, but coming home I realized that Sioux Falls is doing things very well. We are a lot better off than a lot of other communities in this country right now, and we just need to continue working together and finding resolutions that may not fit for other communities, but fit for us, and that we have a great future in front of us as long as we continue doing those things. I also would encourage any of our other councilmen, or maybe even future council members, that next year's conference is in San Antonio. Part of our development plan is to develop the downtown River's Edge, expand the downtown to the eastern side of the river. San Antonio is the model that we're using. It may be a good idea for visualization to send a group down there.
Thank you, Kenny. Deborah?
Thank you. It was an excellent conference from many aspects. I think, one, the leadership training there that's provided to elected officials was just outstanding. The media training class that all three of us had attended was excellent. But in addition, there was a lot of other networking opportunities for elected officials. And as we would get together with other delegations, Kentucky in particular, a lot of the same or similar problems that were kind of facing or upcoming projects, they too had similarities and different funding sources. So that was really interesting to see if there had federal grant money, what was available, and how did they apply for that, and how did they get that. And that was really very useful as you began to network with those different groups. In addition, some of the classes that we had taken, we heard from Thomas Friedman, who is the author of the latest book, Hot, Flat, and Crowded. We had heard from Ken Durbinstein, Chief of Staff to Ronald Reagan, and how things are going in D.C., and that was just excellent. But also, I think Greg and I caught a couple of workshops, one on privatizing the public-private partnership in running city government, and I had attended Engaging Citizens, where Solutions for Today, where in particular City of LA had problem with graffiti in their downtown area, and how they began to mobilize their own citizens, those who perhaps even were disenfranchised with their community, and began to energize those folks, and they actually began to participate more in their own communities, and then eventually helping solve their graffiti problem in the heart of LA. So just exciting things and how problems were solved. It was a great conference.
Thank you, Deborah. Councilor Knutson.
Were any of the three of you able to go to a Housing First session there? I can't remember what city it was. Stacy Teason told me the other day that there was a Housing First session at the conference. Did any of you catch that, okay.
I believe the one that I was attending was basically assisting new members of the community, integrating them into the community. Part of that was a Housing First project that was being done in Indianapolis. I did bring some of that information back, and I'll make sure you get to that.
Very good. Anything else on that subject? Very good. Councilor Knudsen?
Well, I just want to say I am just always proud to work with such a caring group of people as we have up here for city councilors. I'm just proud of this team always. But then the other thing is, back on the homeless Housing First issue, I just wanted to once again just remind our community that our site committee and all of us, all the city councilors, I'm sure, and all the county commissioners, and I mean, that we would still very much welcome a private-public partnership on the Housing First program. And I'd just like to remind people out there that if they would like to do something significant as far as donate land or a building to us for the purpose of the chronically homeless, is that I doubt that they could ever make better use of their extra money. And I just think of the wonderful gift years ago that the Hurwitz family gave to our community for the Baraka House, and I'm thinking about that kind of a gift is, again, we'll do what we can, but with limited resources and so forth. I just want to put a plea out there.
Thank you for that, Councilor Knudsen. Another subject here is we have the latest, greatest version of our resolution of our council priorities. That's going to go out to the 2009 state legislative session. So if you want to do any more fine-tuning or tweaking of that, we'd appreciate your comments on it as far as the councilors go. Another thing that has come to my attention that's going to come at us down the road, it might not sound like much right now, but it's a matter of public policy, and it's going to be public versus private fire hydrants. Now, it sounds like something that's kind of simple, but once you delve into it, it gets a little bit more complex, and there's quite a few questions, I think, that are going to be raised by it. For a final thing here, there's this morning at 10:30, we had a gentleman from the South Dakota Department of Transportation come in and talk about highway funding issues, and I've asked Councilor Costello to speak briefly about that.
Before I do, Don, regarding the fire, you're planning on bringing an ordinance forward regarding the maintenance of fire hydrants? Is that what we learned last week?
Yes, and we are working with Public Works on possibilities for how to maintain them. We're still in that process. We've actually tested most of the private fire hydrants in the last couple of years. So exactly how that would work, we're still working on the details of how that would work.
Okay.
Can you push those buttons in front of the microphones? My apologies.
There, should I start over? We're working with Public Works to figure out the details of how that testing would work and what needs to go into an ordinance. Public Works has actually tested, I think, all but about 100 of those private hydrants in the last couple of years. And so there's a fire code, an NFPA code, National Fire Protection Association code, that deals with the maintenance of private hydrants. And our goal would be to make sure that they are maintained in that way, and the details we'll have to work out with Public Works.
How many private hydrants are there in the city of Sioux Falls, Don?
A little over 900. So there's a significant number.
Very good. Questions of Don? Okay. Councilor Costello, you want to brief us?
Regarding this morning's meeting, the Chamber had thrown together kind of an informational meeting regarding the highway, the state and federal transportation funding, and there were so many number of participants that actually got moved here to Carnegie Hall. It was originally scheduled for the board meeting, but I think we had Secretary Bergquist was down and kind of explained the situation where they are at, and it was very informative, not overly optimistic, I don't think, but informative. Representative Chantel Krebs was also there, and she was on the committee that was working on solutions or ideas of solutions that they've come up with $42 million, I believe, worth of recommendations. And I couldn't give you those specific recommendations, and a number of other people were there. If you recall, you can please chime in. But It's not the end of the solution, but it's a start. I think in visiting with Mark Cotter, Director of Public Works, it sounds like our 2009 capital program is going to be okay, but after that, I think it's kind of dicey.
I thought Chantel gave a pretty good presentation, and her version of it was a little bit different than what you might have read in the papers.
Yeah. No, they had actually had a number of solutions, and only 3 got voted out of their committee. And I assume there's probably some political wrangling that went on there. It's not that they didn't have other solutions, that some of them weren't 100% supported by all the committee. And you know, they're going to be difficult ideas to get passed, but there are solutions. It's just the fortitude to make them happen. It'll be difficult.
Councilor Benega.
Any conversations about Highway 100 and the schedule and all that?
I believe it was the deal as it originally stood was 2016 when it was supposed to be completed, and that is not going to happen. In fact, I don't think we have another section of Highway 100 due to be constructed until 2012 or 13. So clearly that is kind of slowed down. I think they indicated the number 1 priority for us was probably the interchange on 85th and 29. But it's all about money. There's no question of that.
So projects that are on the board for 2009 are safe, but 2010 is when they goes from concepts to dust or whatever.
I think the real problem is that a lot of it hinges on the federal side of things, and at one point they were down to, I believe it was 40-some% of what was originally committed by the federal government that they were actually going to deliver on, and then it got reinstated, but now it's being backed down again, and so it's I don't know how you're supposed to make plans with that. And there was some talk about the economic stimulus plan, using some of that money for infrastructure and driving that. I think there were some obstacles, or part of two of the issues were the plans weren't eligible if they were in your STIP, your current STIP. Well, the STIP is our statewide plan on transportation improvements, and if it needs to be done, it's in our STIP. And so some people are saying it shouldn't include the STIP, or that it needs to be started in 90 days. Well, 90 days from November is not when we start construction projects in the state of South Dakota. So there's some issues there, but hopefully maybe some of that can help us out.
Mark Cotter was there as well, and obviously our arterial roads tie into this equation in a very pronounced manner as well. So we'll be monitoring that as we go along. Councilor Knudsen.
Yes, I think the whole transportation challenge for our state is incredible, and I'm really hopeful that now that the election is over, that both political parties in South Dakota will have the courage to do what's needed to get caught up on our transportation system. And my goodness, I just don't see how they can do anything but that.
I applaud your optimism, Councilor Knudsen. Anybody else? Very good. Well, I see the next thing up here is we're going to have to go into executive. Pardon me?
I see Gail's out there and city attorney as well. Are we going to talk about liquor licenses? We had, in the mayor's meeting, we talked to the mayor about getting an update on where our liquor licenses were at in the ordinance to issue under the state law to allow us to issue more restricted licenses. Yes.
As far as on that, Bob Emerson, by the way, Senate Bill 126, went through a administrative hearing that was handed down October 23rd, and that in that it provides for if anyone was dissatisfied, they could appeal to the circuit court. So that time expires. So we've been looking at it. We're meeting again tomorrow to work on a proposal. And we've had contacts from people who are wondering, and then you have to get together to have the appropriate forms in order to be able to get what is the fair market value required under the law. So that's in the process. But we hadn't gone ahead because you didn't know what any decision would be as far as that. So, but that thing will be moving along, I can assure you that.
And we had also, I thought the mayor had indicated that maybe Lori would be here to kind of discuss some of the concerns, but we have liquor issues tonight, so
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll be here for
She'll
tonight.
be here
We can
tonight.
we can visit with her at that time,
Yeah.
a little bit about what's out there.
As far as inquiries and things.
Right.
Yeah. I think, from what I've seen, that Councilman Brown has had some inquiries, too, I noticed in the email I received.
I did have someone tell me that there are 4 restaurants interested in they've just been waiting for us to make the move to make them available. So the need is out there.
So we hope to have something shortly.
Okay.
Anything else on that subject? Very good. Well, item number 10 here is executive session, and we will be going into executive session to discuss a contract negotiation. It's an update. So I'd be looking for a motion to go into executive session.
I so move Knutson.
Got a motion by Knutson, looking for a second.
Costello.
Second, Costello. All those in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, same sign. Okay, the ayes have it. I would ask that anybody not intimately involved with the contract negotiations, please clear the room at this time.